Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we'll be taking a look at another British Informatics Olympiad question taken from the 2014 paper. So let's have a look at the question. I'll let you have a quick read of the question. I've highlighted the parts which I feel are important, and now let's go to the whiteboard. Okay, so just to summarize what the question's actually asking. There are pretty much two players and points are awarded based on the number of complete loops which either player has. Okay, and these loops are either dashed loops or solid loops. And now let's have a look at the actual solution. So pretty much, as you've noticed, I've kind of made some sort of tiling on the screen here. But then I've also appended some like orange lines throughout. And what these orange lines do is they break up the larger grid, which is of 4x4, into a smaller 8x8 grid. Okay, and now the reason why I have done this is because if we notice a key property about each of the 2 points which each of the lines which connect 2 points, each of the dashed or solid ones, they pretty much connect 2 points on the smaller 8x8 chessboard grid. So for example, if you take this one for example, we notice that it basically joins this particular cell, which if we let the top left cell be 0, 0, then the cell would be 1, 0, and it also connects this cell, and this cell has coordinates 2, 1. Okay, so hopefully you can see why something like this is incredibly useful for this problem. Pretty much every single tile is made up of some sort of connection, which is a solid connection, and then some sort of dotted connection, okay? And now each of the solid connections are basically connecting 2 coordinates inside this smaller 8x8 grid, okay? And each of the dashed connections are also connecting 2 coordinates inside this 8x8 grid. So our problem basically becomes, if we somehow need to translate all of the 6 possible tilings into which pairs of coordinates they connect inside our smaller grid, okay? And now we have 6 possible tilings, and we can pretty much just hardcode which 2 pairs of coordinates get appended for the solid line and the dashed line. And that's pretty much how we will tackle this question. So now there's one more thing which we need to consider while solving this problem, is after we've established which pairs of coordinates are set up, we need to establish whether there's a loop. And now, what's the best way to establish whether there's a loop? Using some sort of graph theory algorithm. In this case, using depth first search, or DFS, is the one which is most suitable. Since, if you remember, DFS explores a node, and then it explores all of its neighbors, and then it continues down recursively, and then continues to explore until there's no more which is left. Now, if within our DFS, we continue exploring, and then if eventually we find that we return back to our original node after a certain number of searches, then we know that it has to be a loop, since there's no other way for you to return back to the starting node. Of course, we would have some sort of visited array, and this would basically prevent any, it would prevent you visiting a child node and then revisiting the parent node. And then all we need to do inside this DFS is pass the number of nodes which we've passed throughout the search, and then that becomes the number of points which get added to the total score for that particular player. Okay, so that's pretty much the gist of the solution. Now let's go to the code and actually walk you through it line by line. Okay, so we start by importing the default data structure. And if you've watched other question 2s, you'll probably notice that this is starting to become incredibly useful for all sorts of problems, but we will be using it in this one as well. And so we start by also taking in grid to this class. And now what this grid is the grid is basically just the grid of the tilings. Each tiling which stores the red line and the green line as well. So that's the grid, and then we also have n. In this case, n is basically the total number of columns and rows which we'll have. And we basically start by creating 2 of these dictionaries. And now these dictionaries store key value pairs, and what the key value pairs are is it stores each node as well as which node it's connected to. And now what exactly do I mean by node in this context? So I mean each pair of coordinates and which coordinates are connected to that coordinate by some sort of line. And then the reason why we have 2 separate ones for green and red is because you can't start a loop on the green side and then finish it and then continue the loop on the red one, obviously. So these 2 are both distinct arrays. Now we initialize these variables, the red points and the green points, and we also have this visited set. This will be very useful, but we'll come on to exactly what it does shortly. So now what we have here is we iterate through each row and column value, and then we determine which 4 neighbors inside the smaller 8 by 8 grid which is present. So if you remember back to the whiteboard, how we had the orange grid, which was basically each tile was subdivided into 4 squares. So each of these are the up, right, down, and left placements, coordinates for a particular tile on the larger square to the corresponding smaller square values. Okay, so now what we basically have is we have 6 different types of tilings, and these are numbered 1 to 6, exactly as stated in the question. And what these do is let's look at type 1 for instance. So type 1 connects N1 and N3. So N1 is the one which is above it, and N3 is the one which is below it. If we go back to the question, we can see that the red line, which is the solid line, does indeed connect the up one to the down one. And then if we go back, then the green one connects N2 and N4. So then it connects the left one to the right one. And now if we look at tile 2, it connects N2 and N4. So N2 is the right one, N4 is the left one. So as we can see, the red line is indeed connected right and left. And then I'm sure you get the idea. We basically just repeat this for each of the different 6 tiles which we have present. Okay, so that's pretty much how we initialize storing which coordinates are connected. And now let's go over how we actually traverse the system. So we have this cycle function. I'll come back to what it does. It makes more sense to go with the DFS one first. So what the DFS does is pretty self-explanatory. It starts at a particular node, and then it takes in color as a parameter. This is very important since you can't interchange between red and green colorings. It starts at a source, and D stores how many nodes it's currently traversed already, and previous stores whichever one its previous node is. Now, this is our breaking condition. If the node which we are currently at is the same as the source node, and if the distance, i.e. the number of nodes it has already traversed, is greater than 0, then we know that we've found a loop. We've found some sort of loop which, since we started at a node, and then we ended at a node which is not, which is the start node, with a distance greater than 0. So then we've basically found a loop, and then what we do is we append this to the self.found array, which is found basically just means like all the loops which have already been found, and then mark all of these nodes as visited. Then we return D. D is the total number of nodes which we've already traversed. And now if the color is green, then for each child in the green subset, if the child is not equal to the node, and if it's not equal to the previous node, then we basically recursively apply the DFS call to the next child, i.e. the next connected node to the particular node. And likewise, we do the exact same with R, and then again we recursively apply this DFS function call. And then our base case is if none of these if loops, if none of them are satisfied, then we return 0, because that basically means that this particular node has no connections to other nodes. So that's how the DFS works. And now, if you've understood everything up until now, great job, like in 95% of the way there to solving this problem. And now all we need to do is put everything together in this cycle function. So what this does is for each node inside the graph, if the node is not if the node has not already been visited, as part of the green nodes which have been visited. Then we carry out a DFS starting at that particular node. And then remember we pass none as the previous one, since there is no previous neighbor to the first one. And then if the distance is not equal to 0, then we add that onto the G points, which is the total number of green points. And we do the exact same thing with red. And then all we need to do is print the green points and red points. And that's pretty much it for this particular question. The rest of the thing is pretty trivial. We just take in the input, and the input has already very helpfully assigned us certain numerical values for each of the tiles from 1 to 6. And then all we have to do is call the cycle function, and then it will print the output as we would like it to do. So now let's test our code and see if it actually works. Okay. Okay. So I guess we'll test it on one of the larger ones. Okay. And now our output is basically 8, 0. If we go back to the question, that is indeed correct. And now if we go back and then search for another one, maybe let's test it on the final test case with 5 marks as well, so quite a big one. And we get 2410. And that is indeed correct. So our code is definitely correct. So that's pretty much it for this particular video. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. It will be very much appreciated. And feel free to check out the GitHub code for this particular question, and as well as all the other British Informatics Olympiad questions inside the link in the description down below. And if you enjoyed this video, thank you very much for watching, and maybe check out another British Informatics Olympiad video as well. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you in another video next time. Bye.